time for Wine Talks with Paul K.
Fascinating story.
This is Robert Mondavi from the Michael Mondavi Winery.
That tastes a lot of wine.
Having a conversation with Shark Tank, Kevin O'Leary.
Michael Silacci, Opus One Winery.
Incredible conversation with Dr. Mia Ruth.
No matter what, you're definitely going to feel better.
Sit back and grab a glass. It's Wine Talks with Paul K.
Hey, welcome to Wine Talks with Paul K. And we are in a away game today up in the Napa Valley, about to have a conversation with Jessica. I was going to say Kogan. How do you say it?
Kogan.
Introductions in just a second. But we are in the hallowed halls of Vintage Wine Estates, one of the great wine establishments in California, in the world, really. Wine Talks available on iHeartRadio, Pandora, Spotify, wherever you hang out for your podcasting, and always sponsored by the Original Wine of the Month Club, now sporting the Napa and Rosé series of wines. Have a listen, and I know that Jessica's interested in this. It comes out today, my rant on Wink.
Yes.
It's being launched today.
I'm absolutely dying to hear it. Will you give me a preview?
Yes, because I was worried about a monologue. I don't know if I'm any good at monologues. Like these conversations I love having, and by the way, looking forward to today. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't sure how it handled, like, looking at the camera just talking.
Yeah.
But I got so emotional about this subject that I decided, it wasn't too bad.
Yeah.
You have to tell yourself that once in a while.
No, what brought out the emotion?
Just the fact that the failure like we talked about the other day.
Yeah.
Of not the business, because businesses fail every day, most of them do, but the failure to the consumer, to the wine consumer.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, we want to talk about you for just a minute.
Yes.
New York, you went to University of New York? NYU, which we previewed for our daughter. And you wanted to be a broadcast journalist.
Yes.
What do you think of this equipment here? Pretty good, huh?
It's pretty. Actually, it's really impressive. I think that part of my love of producing was actually the equipment and the lightness of equipment during my time. It was getting lighter and lighter and lighter. Right. I think this is awesome. Honestly, it's amazing.
We went to the Jack's White Mule Diner yesterday, which is in downtown Napa. Incredible. You have to go there.
Okay.
After eggs or whatever.
Yeah.
And the woman says, I want to start a podcast. So I had given her my card. And she says, I go, look, I'll send you an email. You've got to do it right. You got to use the right equipment. You got to sound good. You got to make Jessica sound good. And that way, people want to listen to you. At least it's got to sound good. So this is why we do this.
It totally matters.
Why didn't you go into that?
When I came to NYU, I was very interested I was an American and English lit major. And I just went with a friend one day to the studio at NYU because NYU had its own news show on the daily. I'm throwing it way back now, but...
no dates, okay?
Donna Hanover, Giuliani's first wife, was actually my professor.
Wow.
And she was about to start a channel called the Food Channel. And I just was amazed with everything that she was doing in terms of setting up the channel, the production required, sending people out in the street to interview others. The whole aspect of getting to know somebody randomly was just like so super exciting to me.
Wow, fun.
And so I just ended up having it as one of my majors and did a lot of internships around it and ultimately decided actually not to go down that road.
Well, we're going to get into that in a second.
Yeah.
Because you said it was I'm going to quote you, a shitty life for a woman.
It was. Definitely. I still think it is. Obviously I'm not there now. I don't know. Things must have changed, but it wasn't
It's such an important subject today in wine.
Yes.
People of color and women. And I've done a lot of podcasting lately with women that have grown in this industry. But I take from your take. I look back at the Napa Valley Vintage Association like in 1969, and of course it was all white men, generally. But there were a lot of immigrants, people that came here with nothing, that kind of story. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know when that sort of mentality shifted away from like, oh, it's okay, women have better palates than men anyway. So, have you seen a change yourself in this last, let's say, 5 to 7 years?
So on the farming side and the winemaking side, for sure. I mean, we're seeing a lot more women, and I mean, women have more sensitive palates. We can debate that. We can debate this all day long, but I mean, I truly, truly believe it's a physiological response to the fact that you can bear children. You just can taste more. You can smell more. So I think that the industry has done a good job of highlighting and promoting women within the winemaking side of the business. I think the executive side of the business still needs a lot of work.
Because I've seen, it's an interesting thing. I mean, yes, I've seen a lot of women winemakers. There's been a lot of philosophical. I've had some great interviews with some women that have some really intelligent thought processes towards winemaking and what they're trying to put in the bottle and what they're trying to convey. There's no debate. You have a better palate. Sandra, my wife here, I try to stump her with Syrah once in a while, and I can't do it. Whether it's a Rhone or whether it's domestic, she goes, I don't like it. So I get it. Was it like that when you started in your career in the fashion world with Donna Karan?
That I just had better style?
No. That there was resistance to women in business, et cetera.
Not so much, because I began working for a woman who was the CEO of her own company. So it was a little bit different. But everyone else around her was a man and at the highest levels. And the fashion industry has its own work to do in promoting women to executive level positions. But Donna was definitely a groundbreaker, and it was really just a nice change from what I was seeing in newscasting and production to see this very powerful woman, incredible artist, focus squarely on clothing women who work. And so it kind of hit all points for me, like women who work, women who make an income, women who are sitting in a boardroom, women who are around men all the time. Finding a way to dress that makes you feel comfortable, being able to sit across the table with men without feeling completely deconstructed.
Yes. Well, that's an interesting word. So I don't know her fashion, obviously. That's not what I do, but what brought you there? Because here you are, a broadcast journalist trying to cut new teeth in this industry, and all of a sudden, wow, this looks pretty fun.
Into wine or
into her.
So it was just a random opportunity through a friend of a family. Donna was leaving Anne Klein, and I'd been doing internships like crazy. And I realized producing was not going to be my jam, did not pay well. As I said, I didn't see a lot of upward mobility for women, and just decided I can write, I'm expressive, I know how to market, and the rest I'll just figure out. And kind of just threw myself into it. I didn't have any formal training, except that I just know how to communicate.
That's, I want to take that thought, because so many people have come to our industry, which is completely different than everything else.
Yes.
It throws curveballs everywhere you can look. And like my coach told me in high school, you can't hit a curveball, Paul. So I'm like, I'm out of the business. No, so many people have come from other industries. Let's just take fashion. There's the famed Matt Fowles from Australia, who bought a huge winery built by a Coca-Cola executive who thought he could transfer his marketing knowledge from sparkling beverages into wine, and it failed miserably.
Yeah.
So, when you came into the wine world from the fashion world, was there synergy there? Or did you have to wait a minute, I got some new things to figure out?
Well, I came from not an operational perspective. I came from a marketing perspective. And wine is a discretionary purchase.
And an emotional purchase.
It is, I fully agree, emotional, but it is a discretionary purchase. It is after my eggs, after my toast, after my salad, after my basics and staples that I have in my grocery, then I can really think about wine. Now, I know that's more of a mass market view of it, but quite frankly, we have to treat customers who purchase wine as people who are spending their hard-earned money on something that they don't have to have. And so fashion is quite similar in that way, which is you don't need 50 pairs of jeans. You just don't. We all have them. So how do you connect with a customer to let them know that, hey, you should try these jeans because of this. And in Donna Karen's case, you should try this suit because it's shaped this way and it will fit you better this way. And I think that that is very translatable to the wine industry. In fact, I think beauty and beauty marketing is very translatable to the wine industry because it is emotional. It is about how you make you feel. And quite frankly, for the next generation, it really is all about connection and word of mouth and sharing products they love.
A small difference, though. Ask 100,000 people in the world if you drink wine. Let's say America, if you drink wine, only 25,000 raise their hand. And with 50% of the population are women, they're going to need to dress. So we've got to figure out how to get to this 25,000 people, of which really smaller percentage of that, because that includes the House Chianti guy at the Olive Garden, or the woman the other day was buying a magnum of Sutter Home Sauvignon Blanc for $4.49. They don't really qualify for the stuff we're doing necessarily. So how you came from the digital world? What was the digital world like with Donna Karen? Idiot. Donna Karen.
It's good. It's such a hard name.
And then into the wine business, where we're really focusing on a much smaller thing. But I want to start with the digital side of things. There was no digital presence really.
No, not.
The internet just started.
No. It was all stationary sites, nothing transactional. It was just like
brochures,
yeah,
digital brochures.
It was digital brochures. I mean, so I actually see it differently than you. For the woman who's buying the 1.5 Sutter Home $4.99, like I actually think that is still a discretionary purchase for her.
Oh, I think it is.
And I think that there is an emotional relationship that is going on with why she's choosing that. Yes, it's a bigger size. Yes, it's a good deal. It's value. But she's choosing that over something else. And so part of our, I think, challenge as an industry has always been really connecting to that moment with customers. Because of the structure, because of the 3-tier structure of our business, it's almost like wholesale and forget it, right? It really is. It's just like, I got the sale. It's going to be delivered to the distributor. I'm done, right?
Correct.
And that is just the worst way to look at it. In fact, like the moment it delivers to the distributor, you should be following it the moment it arrives at the retail location, and you should be spending time at the retail location, looking, understanding, connecting, following customers, and seeing how they engage with your brand.
That's an interesting thought, because I just realized how many times in the years that I'm not going to mention any names here because I want to, but for the listeners, it's a very important thought to understand what you just said. And that is, I've bought slugs of wine on the 31st of the closing of the financial year of a winery, of a distributor, because the contract with the supplier, the winery, was the penalty to have that in inventory, not depleted, was greater than the discount they were giving me, even though I was getting an incredible price on some wines that would normally sell for more. And so you're right. That's like off the table, no longer my problem. I got out of the warehouse. It was somewhere, who knows where it's going to end up at this price.
Yeah.
But, they like selling it to me because I would sell it for a proper margin. But that's an important definition of what's going on out there.
It's super important. And being that you're on the inside of the industry, like it's a small industry. It's not a huge industry. No. I mean, mechanically, that really just changes the way you think about customers. It just truly does.
Right.
And so you have this whole part of the business that doesn't really think about the end user. And then you have in walks digital. And digital is all about the journey. It's all about the customer. It is all about those individual moments. I mean, from Wine of the Month Club, when your customer receives a shipment and they're unhappy, it comes to you, like through your people. But ultimately,
it comes to me too.
You hear it in the structure that we have on the wholesale side of the business. It takes like months to get back to the supplier. that's not going to work in today's world.
Right.
It doesn't work in today's world, which is really the case for digital in such a huge way for this industry. I've been hearing a lot, e-commerce, it's slowed down, it's flat, maybe we should pull back. And it's like, no, you should press the gas pedal and go. This is your moment. This is your moment to recapture the attention of the customer through other digital means. It's not just the direct to consumer, the business that you're doing through your brand on your site, but it's the business that you're doing on grocery.com. It's a business that you're doing on the fourth tier apps like Instacart, Drizzly, Uber Eats, etc. That is really, really important. And that's your digital brand.
Mm-hmm. Well, you are, and I thought I was being so proud of myself for knowing the term CX, customer experience, which is really a newer term because of what you're talking about. We didn't have customer experience managers or supervisors, what do you want to call them?
Yeah.
In a company like this, maybe even 5 years ago.
That's correct.
Didn't really happen. You didn't really do that because there was no part of the funnel that dealt with awareness, that dealt with that beginning of that experience, like that first click or that first Google search or the first whatever. That's in your job as a CX customer experience is to follow that process.
Yeah, I mean, so you do know that I am experience is in my title.
Yes.
And
There you go. That's right.
so I'm the Chief Growth and Experience Officer. And I remember talking to Terry and Pat about it, and they're like, experience?
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Yeah.
And only just a few years earlier, my title was, they're like, what title do you want? I'm like, Chief Digital Officer. They're like, IT? And so you see how things change,
Yes.
right? I mean, now we see within the industry so many chief digital officers. I mean, Constellation, Malika, she has the title of chief digital officer. Over at the wine group, there's a title of chief digital officer. And it's not IT people, it's actually your true marketers, because digital marketing is traditional, is just, it's a form of traditional marketing on steroids. Now, what is the next level after that? To me, it's experience, because experience is really ultimately what we're all after, which is when we have the privilege to interact with a customer, it is our job to make that experience the best it can be. And also, when we have the opportunity to connect with our employees, our job as a company is to make that experience as positive as possible. So I believe experience is our future. I don't think it's just within the wine industry, but I think you're going to see a lot more CPG companies with that title.
It's brilliant to the extent that it came in because it was necessary, right? So with all the paths that marketing can go today, with all the platforms that people hang out on, with all the changes in social networking. And so I just wrote these notes down. In marketing, when I started doing this in 1988, very defined and very structured and very obvious. I knew if I mailed 900,000 pieces of mail that I would get 0.66 to up to 0.75 return. And I knew that customer was going to last 18 months. I mean, I knew all this because it was just very stable. And now with the way marketing is, because you went from newspaper articles, newspaper ads and mail to email, and then Groupon started, and so now we have all these different paths that you have to create this impression, this experience, and every one of those touch points has to be a positive touch point.
I mean, that's the hope, right?
And it's not an old. I mean, it's not a new idea. There's this book called Moments of Truth, written like in the 80s. And it was a story of the Swiss Air, I think, and he turns the funnel upside down. He put the authority to make a customer happy at the most basic level employee, so it didn't have to come from the top. And so the flight attendants, the gatekeepers, they could all make a customer happy with all the tools they needed. Yeah. And that was like a typo let's say you send a box out today and there's a typo. That's a negative customer experience. So all that ties into it. So you need somebody to manage all this.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's I mean, I think that what that book wrote in the 80s is so much more applicable today on steroids. And it is really important for an organization to empower its ambassadors to make decisions on behalf of the company to customers. And it doesn't happen enough because if you're not in an organization where you as an employee feel empowered, you're not going to empower your customer. It just is what it is. But I do believe that at the end of the day, kind of like what you're doing, what you have been doing for 30 years, which has changed so much for you. At the end of the day, customers, regardless of whether they're buying from your website, from a winery, from a bar, from a grocery store, on an app, on Groupon, they want to know that there is like validity, credibility, and meaning behind what they're buying.
Do you think they're duped? And Sandra and I go through this all the time. We watch these, the top 10 wine clubs. It doesn't matter whether it's wine clubs or light bulbs or stereo systems. The top 10 that you read about are all affiliate-related, pay-for positions, right? And do you think the consumer's a little bit unfooled by now? We were fooled for a little while to click on those and go, wow, that's the best. And then realize later, digitally they can say whatever they want, do whatever they want. And so this relationship you're establishing has to go a little deeper, a little more granular than that.
It's a really good question. And I think that because we're so inside baseball, we think that that the jig is up.
Yeah.
But it's not.
It's not.
And the problem is that, and I'm sure this is possibly part of your rant about Wink, is, we have, as an industry in these clubs, have really shot ourselves in the foot because what we deliver to customers are not great quality wines. And at the end of the day, even if a customer doesn't know how to swirl it, sniff it, taste it, whatever, they can taste wine. They may not be able to score it. They may not be able to talk about, the sousance and, all of the elements of what brought this varietal to its greatest moment. It either tastes good or it tastes bad. And if you put, swig out there, and if you put wines out there that aren't good, and you're sacrificing product quality for acquisition of customers, sacrificing product quality to overcome shipping costs, I believe that model is just, A, it's doomed for failure, and B, you are turning a generation of customers away from the product.
That's totally right. That was the Wink rant does. I do mention that. It's also a Ponzi scheme. At that point, it becomes a Ponzi scheme, unbeknownst to the buyers, until they figured it out later that they can't support the high acquisition costs because no one's buying more of their swill wine, even though it's in a nice package and thick glass and a nice label. Eventually, the consumer doesn't taste the value of these wines.
Well, I mean, they didn't taste it immediately. That's why they couldn't keep it going. I mean, the churn was so huge, right? I mean,
it's so different because when I worked at my dad's shop in the 70s, and then when my dad started this club, there were no, I don't like the term white label. There were no branded wines. There was a little bit. We used to buy, I think we bought some sparkling wine under my dad's brand, but it didn't exist. Not that it's bad. I try to convey to our listeners and consumers that just because a wine is made in a large, like most wine is really made in large quantities and not estate bottled, right?
Correct.
95% of it.
Correct.
So it doesn't mean the wines are bad. It just means that they're not. If they have to buy wines for 50 cents a liter from Europe, it has to be, by definition, not very good. And that's what they had to do, like you said, to reduce their shipping costs, increase the volume, get more of it here in America.
I mean, they're spending money everywhere but the product,
right?
And we're not
That's
talking.
a good way to put it.
I mean, and we're not talking about like huge product costs, right? I mean, it's just like I just think that it always, especially in kind of newer generation models, you are so driven by the big numbers, right? The big numbers that are put upon you by investment bankers, big numbers that are put upon you by investors. And wine just isn't that way.
Yeah.
It takes time, kind of like time to mature in the bottle, time to mature in the vineyard. Wine is a evolution, not a revolution. And if you stick to product quality, and I'm not talking like over the top insane, like,
Right.
first growth shit, like, excuse my language, but I'm just talking like
I'm going to tell it to Lafitte people.
good wine, just good wine, like Boggle. Good wine.
Yeah, just
good wine.
Solid wines that people
solid
open
wines.
up, want to share with people.
If you can put solid wines into a wine club, I think you can do. I think you
for
can do
sure.
well. I mean,
You can.
Cameron Hughes wine is a perfect example of
Yeah, I want to
that.
hear about Cameron Hughes in a second here, but it's a really, really good point. And that's what I was trying to get to in my dad's store. We didn't have white label wines to buy for 50 cents a gallon or $2 a gallon, whatever it is. We only resold the best values we could find at the time we found them.
Yeah.
And there was an important principle there that we still try to maintain. It's a little harder because of the stuff that comes down the pike.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so interesting for me when distributors come to taste wine, which is tasting day today. I know who's going to bring in the junk, and I know who's going to bring in the good stuff.
Yeah.
So, but that mentality in today's world is hard. That philosophy and that marketing brand is hard to do today because of the source of wines. Like you said, there's not a lot of attention being paid to it, and so the consumer's getting like, I'm not saying duped, but they're kind of like going, nah.
There's just, I mean, we think that consumers don't really have a perspective, like in a way, like when I read, even today, when I read trade publications within our industry, I'm like, who are you talking to?
Yeah.
Like, who are you talking
That's
to?
a good point.
And I think that we consumers, they know, they can taste what they taste. They are looking to find something that they like to taste. That's it.
You said something yesterday. We were talking about the story, and I wrote these notes down. I used to work a booth all weekend, 12 hours a day, and I would shake the hands of every customer that came through.
Where?
All over. LA County Fair, Northern State, Oregon State Fair, the Taste of LA, the Taste of Hollywood, Taste of Pasadena, name it.
Were you doing tastes of wine?
No, you couldn't do that.
No pouring. Okay.
The rules have changed
Yes.
since then too. But no, we would. But if the wine said, Cameron Hughes Wine Club or Wine of the Month Club, doesn't matter. But as soon as the person walked up to the booth, and this is digitally harder to do, as soon as they walked up to the booth, we knew they were interested because they read the sign, they came up. So all the suspects that are walking by us that are now filling the funnel, the ones that stopped filled the funnel, and then we'd shake their hand.
Yeah.
How do you replace that relationship? Guy talked to me, or he talked to my salesperson, and I had 3 staffs on 3 shows a weekend.
Yeah.
It's hard work.
It is hard
and I don't know
work.
if it works anymore. I don't know if the generations that are going to go to these kinds of shows are going to want to be sold something at a booth. But back then it was okay. How do you replace that relationship where you're shaking somebody's hand, looking in the eyes, and saying you're going to love this?
I mean, I think there's always going to be room for that. And I think it just looks slightly different, right? I mean, that model, I think, can be carried out quite well in the physical grocery store, where if your product is in store, you should be in store supporting it and talking about it and, shaking hands and kissing
Good point.
babies. I mean, I think events, especially like rock events, if you can't afford a big sponsorship, you get a little booth and you use that opportunity to connect with customers. The physical connection will always be important. It just doesn't move as quickly as the digital proliferation. So I think they both have to be in tandem. At Cameron Hughes Wine, due to COVID, we stopped doing these events, but for years, the company did what was called customer appreciation events. And it was about bringing the tasting room to their city. And we would do it in partnership with Pottery Barn, in partnership with Williams and Sonoma, with Room and Board, places where you can relax on furniture and drink some wine and enjoy it. I think it's really important that you get out there and that you're talking to your customers all the time, whether they're on a database list or if they are in a physical store brought to you by a grocery store. It is kind of a critical piece of relating. And I think with Napa and Sonoma, what we're seeing is that because we have so much invested here, so much invested in this area, it's very difficult for us to think creatively to get out there. I mean, we had this kind of like one moment during COVID where we're like, oh, let's do virtual tastings, right? Go into the customer's living room, go into the customer's kitchen, like connect that way, bring communities together. And I think it was wonderful. But as soon as everything opened up, virtual tastings really took a back seat because you only have so many people who can do the physical tasting and the virtual tasting. I mean, in terms of staffing. So
We did a bunch, and they plummeted afterwards. So tell me, I want to hear about Cameron. Cameron was your boyfriend.
Yes, he was my boyfriend.
That's how we start this.
That's how it all started. He was my boyfriend, and he grew up in the wine industry. He grew up in Modesto. So he had been around wine. His dad was one of the first people that went over from Gallo to the wine group when the wine group had bought Franzia box wines from Coca-Cola. That was kind of the big disaster there, that moment of operational disaster, but they turned it around. And Cam was really, he actually really liked high-end wines, collected wines. And when I moved in with him 100 million years ago, he was like, I just don't understand why we can't get really great tasting wines at a $15 price point. Like, why are all these wines like $65? It doesn't make any sense. I see these wines in the bulk market and they're not getting to customers. And so literally, I was working at another company and he kind of shared the business model concept with me. And I think it was just one night with Bonnie June Red that I was like, I'm in, let's do this. Let's start this company, because Bonnie June Red, just had scored huge points. It was back in the day and it was like $20 a bottle. And it was not that great. Just really wasn't.
No.
And so we started Cameron Hughes Wine, and basically the whole premise of the company is that we go out there, we find wines that are destined for super ultra premium labels, but for one reason or another did not make it. And they come to us and we do the blending, a little bit of blending. Sometimes you don't have to do any blending, and we sell it directly to a customer. Now, the great part of this is when we have the wine, it's an awesome experience because you really access wines that are truly and genuinely unavailable to you below $65. The downside is when it's sold out, it's gone and it's not repeatable. And there isn't this vintage to vintage concept, which can be tricky for a lot of people. So we started this business. We had the direct to consumer piece was relatively small. We had our first breakout with Costco, where we hand sold the wines in Costco. And it grew like wildfire because for Costco, they love that in and out nature. They love the newness of a new wine, et cetera. And at the same time, our direct-to-consumer business was growing, and that's really the area that I specialized in. In 2017, VWE purchased Cameron Hughes Wine, and Cam and I divorced, but we have two beautiful, amazing girls, and still very, very good friends. And he went off to do his own thing, and I am basically carrying on the legacy of Cameron Hughes Wine.
That's interesting. That's an interesting news story.
Yeah, and it's been what an amazing experience it has been.
I don't know, the tricky part of end of a vintage. Look, Trader Joe's whole wine section was based on the fact that there was only 2,000 bottles in the country left, and when you don't come back and buy some more, you're going to be out of it. I suppose if you're on the shelf and you're, Martha Stewart Chardonnay, that yes, you need an ongoing, steady source of product, and the consumer's going to go look for it the next time. But I'm not sure, and you would know this better than I. Obviously, you did it, but there's certain value in the idea that there's a limited amount available, and people are going to want to taste it and see what he's done next, because you built a brand around this idea of extraordinary juice at a discounted price.
Right.
I did moderate a show for the Trojans, the SC Business School. Had about 50 people in the audience, and I was sitting next to one gentleman who's a friend of mine. Actually owns a winery in Paso, so he owns the dirt and the tractors and the wedding chapel. And another guy who's trying to start a brand by buying grapes or juice in Napa. Of course, you know what that costs.
Yeah, I mean, right now.
Yeah. So afterwards, a woman came up to me. She says, "How do I get a hold of extra juice from Screaming Eagle?" I'm like, I don't know, but I don't know this. But if I did, I wouldn't tell you probably. So.
I mean, that is really. I mean, having done this for almost 20 years now, and watching all the deals being done. I mean, there's all kinds of crazy intergenerational stuff that goes on within the industry, where opportunities to pick up some wine that may have been left in the library come to you, but also it is through building long-term relationships and being very quiet and discreet,
yes,
and never revealing your sources. Right. So I think it's kind of a funky thing about our industry in that way.
It's a passionate product. It's a passionate, emotional buy. And yes, I've bought many gallons of juice with somebody said, "Look, you can't tell where it's from," and you just don't do it.
You don't do it.
Not the sake of risking that relationship in the future. That might happen again. You need their juice, right?
There was one NDA that we had to sign. I think it was like 250 pages. It was ridiculous.
Come on.
It was ridiculous. But if I can't tell you who it is, but if I told you, you'd be like, "Yeah,
you get it, right?"
Yeah.
I did a study of our customer database. This is going back to the loyalty side of things, and I found that our average customer, the last 5,000 people that had formally canceled, said we're not doing this anymore, was 30 months, which you knew would be a very good number.
That's great.
But it's skewed. It's not the right average. The number, whatever the three averages you can use, right? Because we have loyalty from some people from the 70s still. In fact, Senator did a report, 80s and 90s, and people that have been getting wines for 2 months. And that's just brand. That's just like they love what we do. They love the story.
How many of those do you have?
I don't know. You had that number? A couple hundred, probably.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Well, a lot of them in the 70s are passed away since.
But that's amazing.
Well, it's the story. And that's what I want to get back. We were talking about this the other day on the phone. It's hard to tell the story. We can tell the stories all day long. We can try and get them on social. People's attentions are short. You try to run a video, it's 30 seconds. That's too long. But you're saying it's about the story now.
It is.
We have to tell the story because, like I mentioned, getting it for $3 on Groupon is not a story to tell somebody.
I mean, listen, getting it for $3 on Groupon is a closeout.
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately,
Well, it's also 50 cent a liter crap.
I mean, it's not going to be great. I mean, there was at a time when Cameronese Wine was selling some wine on Groupon, and those were the luckiest people in the world. I cannot tell you how many customers came from Groupon to CHW on their own, just based on the product quality, right? So again, it's kind of looking at marketing in a different way. Yes, you can't tell the story on Groupon, but if the product excites and delights the customer enough, they may take the time to come to the actual website of the brand. And that's where your story should shine, which is, again, to the point around direct to consumer and digital. Right now, a lot of wineries are saying, well, I spent all this money to get into direct to consumer, and the headwinds are not good. We need to now pivot back into wholesale, and it's like, no, stop. You need part of your relevance and your resonance and your ability to engage in the industry is actually through your digital communication, your direct consumer site. Having it as a place for customers to visit, transact, great, but you need it. You have to have it because that's where you own the narrative.
You have to. People, it's funny. Our site is old. I'll tell you that now. It's old. But
I actually am very impressed with what you've done with your site.
But
on the technology that you're built on.
we're on this old thing. We're rewriting
How are
it.
you doing it? I'm actually so seriously curious because a lot of people don't really understand within our industry the technical aspect of building out a transactional platform.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate. They all think it's like IT desktop help, and it's not. It really is software design and development. So how are you doing?
Well, for one, I bought my first database to run the subscription model in 1993, and I helped the guy code the thing. So there were subscription models back then where the music club,
What did you code in?
it's all SQL. Mm-hmm. So I didn't write the code myself, but as far as operationally, and like I told you on the phone the other day, all the canned versions of wine-related DTC subscription model software isn't as capable of what we have in our back end. What we don't have is one end, right? I told you we have an API, and that part's very difficult to manage. Yeah. And we use an e-commerce engine that is not that flexible either from a promo code standpoint and all that stuff. But you just pound on it. And what I've found today compared to the old days, when I bought my first database, it did everything. Yeah. It had a little bit of accounting, it had a little bit of inventory, it had a little bit of purchase orders, it had all these things built into it. And that's the way you wrote software back in those days. And I owned a software company before that, by the way, with 5 other guys.
Got it.
So, but now if you buy, and this is what I had this as a question, you hear on the radio, you can start selling stuff tomorrow. All you got to do is start a Shopify site and you can start selling whatever you want. And I'm like, no, you can't. It's a lie. Because you have to learn so much. Just having an e-commerce site isn't enough, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you get that site SEO?
Yeah.
Right? How do you get social to get people to go to the site? Just, all that stuff adds up, and that's a whole learning curve. But what happens today now, you buy that shopping cart. Oh, you want a shipping module? Buy that, add it on. You got to pay a fee. Oh, you want taxes? Great, let's add that on. Oh, you want a UPS? Okay, and all of a sudden you've got this nucleus with all these little tangents.
Yeah.
But they don't talk to each other.
Yeah.
They only talk to the core.
Yeah.
And what if you need the tax module to talk to the shipping module? You can't do it.
Yeah.
Or you're into more
No,
code.
I mean, it's so true. And I mean, that's headless e-commerce.
So you've had these how do you manage? I have to turn that question around. How do you manage it with so many brands? You've got the VWE brands, you've got Cameron Hughes, you've got so much on your plate to raise the customer experience. How does this happen? You have 100 people here?
We have a really incredible DTC organization, but I will say the platform that is used primarily by vintage wine estates from POS, so tasting rooms, to wine clubs, to e-com, is a platform you've never heard of. And it's owned by a publicly traded company in Canada that owns 600 software companies.
Wow.
So it's a very fascinating
that's unbelievable.
play there.
Yeah.
It's a very stable piece of software. It does a whole bunch of things that you are finding that does not happen anymore. Right. The problem is there's no innovation. There's no, it is very difficult to build onto that platform because you don't have programmers and an ecosystem dedicated to improving the experience. So on one hand, super stable, and you get all the reporting you need and you connect all the dots in a very agile way. On the other hand, you're actually not improving the customer experience. So you're actually not improving your customer acquisition capability. So it's great for the internal organization, not so great for the customer. And so these are choices that you have to make as an organization. What are we capable of focusing on right now, and with what resources, et cetera. But ultimately, what you're talking about and what you're kind of contemplating is the future. There's no other way.
You have to. You wonder if anybody that writes this stuff has ever sold a thing in their life, one. And two, has any idea of what might be coming down the pike that they need to keep the architecture open enough to be able to fix. Because what's happened to our sites over the years, we keep bolting stuff on, all of a sudden it's craps out.
Yeah.
And we got to revamp the whole thing. And we're in the process of doing that now. But stuff pops up all the time. So, for instance, there's a couple companies that have these algorithm, do you drink black coffee and salt your food and like mushrooms? We're going to select wines from you.
Yeah.
You think that's an experience?
No. Though I think it's gimmicky.
Totally
it's very gimmicky, and I think it is it's just a form of display advertising in my mind. And I think for some people who are just surfing the web and just like on their phones, like it's fun to do. Do they really connect in? No. Are they going to engage in the brand in a meaningful way? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
But that's just, and those businesses aren't performing like how they should.
What
be
about
performing.
the same business, or actually a couple of them are the same that do that? Then they send you some kind of test pack, like. Okay, there's a few things we have to talk about, and we're coming on 45 minutes already. So, but they send you a test pack, and then they want you to go online and evaluate it so they can get your palate. I'm like, nobody's going to do that. Nobody's going to buy 4 bottles or 3 half bottles or whatever they're doing, taste them, and sit in front of the computer and answer questions about them so they can craft your palate so they can send you the other stuff. I don't know anybody that would do that take the time to do that. Would you agree with that or no?
I mean, if let's say there were, right? Like, let's just in a world that let's imagine there were. Let's imagine there were. I mean, as a supplier, like really, how much choice can you offer?
Exactly.
By design, it is a failure because you are limited. If they say, I love mushrooms and I love green peppers and I love, the smell of, cows on a fresh sunshine day, like the supplier only has like on hand 4 different kinds of wines at maximum.
Right. Sure.
And so it is impossible to meet all of that energy that customer has put behind the tasting. Wow. So to me, this is like, it's a lose-lose.
Isn't that what the point system kind of is too?
Well,
Suckley's coming on the show, and he's going to defend the way they rate wines.
Yes.
You and I were talking at an event not too long ago.
Yes.
And I certainly think there's a place for this.
Of course.
But one of my scenarios is we just tasted a wine and I fell in love with it. I bought it from my own cellar, at Liston Negro from the Canary Islands. Mm-hmm. Okay? Fabulous wine. Right?
Yeah.
Incredible. Let's say it got 95 points from somebody.
Yeah.
And then a 95-point Napa Valley Cab comes down the pike. Wines that are like, couldn't be more opposite. Both 95 points. So if I'm a point buyer, I'm possibly going to be disappointed in one of these because they don't fit my profile. Mm-hmm. So it comes down to the brand loyalty where I trust Jessica's palate when she sends me wines.
So this is where being an outsider to the industry has really made a difference for me. I totally respect all of the critics who write about wines and assign points. If you ask any customer walking down the street, they don't even understand what it means. But what they do understand are reviews by their peers. And so what has made such a difference for customers are those reviews. We talk about it like laughingly on Amazon, like, oh my God, so many reviews. It's all 5 stars. But if you actually read wine reviews, real wine reviews by customers, if you go to Cameron Hughes Wine, because such a vocal community about the wines, they tell you their experience of the wine. They talk about it. And that to me is really kind of the now and the future. Mm-hmm. It's really customer-driven marketing. It's customer-driven reviews because people are trying to connect with other people and to understand what it is that they're experiencing. And I think that a lot of people, and I don't know if you agree with this here, a lot of people who've enjoyed wine have been very disappointed by wine. They've been burned. And so they are always looking for who to trust. And the point that you made, 95-point Canary, Islands wine, lighter body, whatever, 95-point Cabernet, big, heavy, blah, blah, blah. And the customer's just like, well, it's both 95 points, so it must be good. Instead of, I think the difference there is when the customer reads the reviews, the real reviews, like the peer reviews, like kind of like what they do in medicine.
But you're talking about the lingo that they might understand.
Very much so.
Because
And
it's coming from their peers.
coming from their peers, and like I tasted it with my grandfather, or, is having, always get really bad headaches. And for some reason, this wine didn't give me a headache. I don't know why. I definitely recommend. I mean, you can't if you can't imagine, it is almost sometimes nothing about the wine.
Yeah, it's true. I'm going to tell you a scenario. I'm going to tell you a real story.
Yeah.
Your opinion of what happened. In Ralph's the other day, doing a TikTok video, oddly.
In Ralph's?
Yeah, we're in Ralph's.
You were doing a TikTok? When? Recently?
Yeah, I was recently. I don't know where I put it, though. I love going to the market and doing little rants on stuff. It's just fun for me to do. And if you look at those markets now, every single bottle is a shelf talker.
Yeah.
And some have points, some don't, but some have a price discount, whatever it is. And so the woman comes up, and we're trying to shoot this. We don't want anybody in the aisle, and so we're waiting. And this woman comes up, and I recognize her. And she says, I said, what are you looking for? Just like an idiot. I'm just talking to her. Like Sandra said, you'll talk to anybody. So she says, I'm trying to buy something that I don't usually buy. I said, what do you usually buy? She said, I buy J. Lohr. I said, oh. Now, she doesn't know who I am, but she thinks she recognizes me. But I go, these are a couple of wines that are in that same sort of style and price range. Didn't pick one. And then she left because she felt bad. And then we shot her a little TikTok. She came back. And then we realized that we knew each other from Little League.
Oh, my gosh.
Yes. And I coached her kids, And then she knows I'm in the wine business.
Yeah.
And she still doesn't buy anything. So she left. And I told my social network girl, I said, look, you just saw two amazing things happen in this wine. One, it's such an emotional product that she didn't have the heart to bet. She didn't want to buy something I recommended. And she didn't have the heart to pull it off the shelf and something else off the shelf and disappoint me. At the same time, she was looking for something new. And isn't that what we would love to have? Expand your palate and try something that you haven't tried before.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
So I do think it is unfortunate that she felt so bad, and so fearful,
went back like 5 minutes.
fearful that she would try something that maybe she didn't like that you recommended. I don't know, but
it's emotional.
It is very emotional. I do think that we have to count on. I always say it's like the intergenerational handover. Like, I really think we have to count on families to share, with their children what it is that they love about wine, taste wine with their kids, enjoy wine with their kids. But when you're in a store, I actually think it's about honoring kind of what they like and really just being like, if you're scared about the investment, if you're scared about the cost, like, here's a wine that's like kind of halfway in the middle. And just, I guess, in the years that I spent standing in Costco talking to customers for hours, what
a great experience.
Amazing. It was
you learned so
truly
much.
So special. I think that some customers are just like, red wine, white wine, like which?
Right.
Just tell me which one. Is it good? Good. Good. Can I trust you? Is it good? Okay. But I think for a lot of people, it's like, just give me like 3 reasons why this wine will make a difference. And most times, I find that this line is the line that usually works, which is, your friends will thank you.
That's really what they want.
That's
You really want them to go. Pour that glass, and they at the dinner table, and they go, wow, this is really good. Where'd you get this?
That is really...
This young girl sold it to me in Costco, and I don't know. No, kidding.
No. But this is really why wine is truly... It is so similar to luxury marketing, right? Because it's a status symbol.
That's true.
It really is. Even that Sutter Home 1.5 is a little bit of a status symbol.
Well, it would be if somebody pours it at their house, and they go, this is pretty good. Where'd you get this?
Yes.
$4.49 at Ralph's.
Yes, totally. But I think for the customers that we're selling to at 15 and above, they want to know that what they're going to put on the table is going to be impressive to a few, to at least some people. And that's what we go for. That's really what you go for. And if it's not going to do that, you got to be honest.
There's another book called Raving Fan Customer Service. Have you seen it? It's older. And it's really about what you just said. you want the customer to put that bottle of wine on the table, pour it for somebody, and when the guy says, or the woman says, "Where did you get this?" they go off like, "Oh, I got it from Cameron Hughes. It's unbelievable stuff, and their customer service is so great, and the wines are great. If I don't like it, they send me." I mean, that's what you want.
That's what you want.
A raving fan,
that's it.
and that takes experience. I have one last question.
Sure.
We're already in it.
Yeah.
And this is more philosophical. I just came up with it yesterday in a podcast with John Priest at Etude. There's all this history of the old world. We're going to go philosophical wine here.
Okay. I'll do my best.
Old world being, for the listeners, Europe and parts of the, the Asian countries, Asia Minor, Croatia, Slovenia, stuff like that. And bound by rules like Burgundy or Bordeaux or Tuscany. And history, hundreds and hundreds of years, the monks and the Burgundies in the 1200, 1100, 900. All, in my opinion, create forward style. It's not something you taste in the bottle, but it certainly impacts the way things are done in that community and that part of the world for wine. That's what old world is about. Yeah. We like to say it's a style. We like to say it's just geographical, but it really isn't. It really is about the history and the years and years and years of experience and generations that have learned from the previous generation on what wine is. In the world, we don't have that. America, Australia, South America, we're just starting, really.
Yeah. Agreed.
But then this concept of sustainable wines, organic, biodynamic, that we're starting to play with here, and we just noticed driving over here, sheep were on Highway 29, stomping the ground and eating the wildflowers. And I was thinking, wow, maybe this is the new world's version of this historical movement, the generations that we're going to pass forward. So we get to start our own, even though they're going to do it in Europe too, but America gets to start learning from previous generations on the things that are important in our industry. In this case, sustainable farming, biodynamic farming, or organic farming. You see that as something to hang on to in our industry?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, these next in millennials, for sure, but Gen Z, absolutely. Wellness, the category of wellness is about what you put in your body. And what is it made from? Where does it come? Not the story, but really the sustainability piece.
The actual part of
it. The actual, what chemicals am I putting in my body? I want to understand that. And I absolutely think that message is so super critical. I mean, we have VWE as a chief sustainability officer. I mean, in wine country, we've been doing sustainable farming because we have to, drip irrigated farming for a long time, water issues. I just think that we can also lead on that. And I do think that at the end of the day, you mentioned, in the beginning, you mentioned White Claw and all the shit that's in White Claw, excuse my language. But really, people do what the reason why White Claw is winning is because they have a nutritional ingredients on the back of it that says 100 calories. And if we could just, in the wine industry, get over ourselves and put information on the back of the bottle about the nutritional components within the bottle, I'm literally not kidding, and made it easier to open a bottle of wine with Stelvin closures, I believe that it would be a totally different universe for us. We wouldn't be looking at drop-off rates. We would be looking at growth again.
It's generational. It's going to take generations for I have seen wines lately that have ingredients on them, and it's usually because they're the people that don't put anything in them.
And so I think for the established wineries that are doing really well, part of reaching out to younger customers is to have that stuff. It's important. It matters to them. I mean, study after study.
Somebody made the argument on a podcast, you don't go back and look in the kitchen when the chef is making your meal and ask him what he's putting in it. I go, well, it's an interesting point.
Yes, but I mean, the chef only reaches 4 people. I mean, we're talking about thousands and thousands of people, right? Millions.
I mean, the concept of you are what you eat eats. And I brought this up with a brilliant woman from Fry Vineyards.
Yes.
Right? We talked about this a little bit. Mm-hmm. Brilliant woman. I mean, she saw that I had the book by Rudolf Steiner on my desk. But she also saw that the binding hadn't been broken yet. Because I see you really
A
touched
cute
this,
observation.
no, it's like a model home. It's just a picture. It's just a book you put on there.
She's like, maybe you want to open that.
But she was brilliant in that conversation about what you are, what you eat eats. And so if the grapes are eating, chemicals and pesticides, then that's going to end up in the bottle. I don't know if you suggesting we're going to label that, but I think sustainability is, the wine industry is probably the most obvious place
Yes.
for sustainable work. Right?
Yes.
It just makes sense to do it that way as a farmer. But at the same time, I have Italian, French vineyard managers or owners saying, hey, my kids are playing in that vineyard. My dog goes out there. Somebody told me a story about the dog going into the vineyard and getting all this pesticides, herbicides, and insecticides on them, and then coming in the house, and then the infant crawling over there and putting their nose in their fur. I go, wow, that's pretty powerful vision right there, right?
Yeah.
That could be a problem.
Yeah.
So I think it makes a ton of sense. I just, the point of my comment was, this could be our moniker for the wine industry in the world to continue to massage and make the availability of sustainable organic biodynamic wines as part of our culture that we grow on generation to generation and we continue to grow. Like, we're just putting sheep in the vineyard now, but who knows? Maybe actually there's a vineyard in Patagonia, Argentina, where the guy said the armadillos are back. Anyway, this has been such a great. We could do this probably for hours. We've already been an hour, so I don't want to take any more of your time. I really appreciate you taking the time to sit with us here at Vintage Wine Estates, and I hope things are growing and doing well. And Cameron Hughes brand is growing. I see the emails. We subscribe to all of them. Haven't bought any yet, but it's okay.
One day.
Fascinating conversation.
Thank you, and it's such a pleasure to meet you. I mean, you are a legend.
Yeah, well, in my own mind. So we will do it again. And if you're in LA, we have a wonderful studio and wine shop and tasting room. We'll tilt the glass.
I'd love to.
Cheers.
Cheers.